Hello and welcome back to the Gamecock Scoop podcast. This is the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com, which is the home of Gamecocks athletics on Rivals. I'm here with Zack Carpenter. My name is Caleb Alexander, and we're going to talk some South Carolina sports today. Really want to get started here with some recruiting, and then we can get into some of the more sad parts of Gamecock sports, at least as far as the news goes.
I thought everything was positive and rainbows and butterfly kisses. What's
I
going
think the
on?
recruiting stuff is pretty positive. That's why we're starting with that, and then we can get to the bad news later. Good news first. So the first thing, and the thing I titled the episode about is that Trovon Ball, 3-star O-line man out of Pace Academy in Atlanta, is set to announce his commitment decision on Saturday. Reached out to him today and talked to him for a second. He's not sure exactly what time that's going to be yet, but he'll let us know, and then we'll let you know. By the way, scrolling across the screen there, but check out GamecockScoop.com. We have updates, news, forum, free forum, paid forum, all that good stuff. So check that out and follow us on social media at Rivals Gamecock on all of those platforms. Also, if you want to always get notified when we go live or when we post a podcast, subscribe wherever you're listening right now. Anyway, so yeah, Trovon Ball is set to announce his commitment on Saturday, and I think we both think that is looking pretty good for South Carolina right now.
Yeah, I actually, you would put in a future cast for South Carolina to land him. Let me check the dates. You on April 19th, and I just put one in on May 20th, so a month later. I wanted to wait a little longer to get some more information, feel more confident. That's how I usually go about doing my future casts. I don't put in a ton of them. I know a lot of people are like, boom, 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 boom. But I'm a little more lax on mine until I'm usually like typically at least 70% confident or higher, typically higher. And I put one in just after talking with some people in the know, especially on this East Coast recruiting trip. And it's lining up for them to get their second commitment in the 2023 class, their first offensive line commit. And what, Caleb, have we been saying for the past since Sabari Sandy committed on May 8th? Like, it's might be taking a while for them for South Carolina to finally like get this class into gear. But that once the first guy was in, we're going to see that momentum rolling, because recruiting is all about momentum, is the cliche that I say like a dozen times per week, it seems. And we both were pretty adamant that once one guy was in, that we would start seeing it fill up, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think June's going to be even crazier. We've said it a billion times, and we'll continue to talk more about it. But there's two big weekends in June, June 10th, June 24th, that have tons and tons and tons of official visits. And I'm expecting several welcome homes and hopefully some public commitments coming out of those. Speaking of that, there's a whole list of official visits that you can access on GamecockScoop.com. You can actually access that for free, so you don't have to pay for that. If you click recruiting on GamecockScoop.com and then hit visits, it'll give you a whole list of all those visits. And a new one got announced today. Bakari Swain, the athlete, who I believe the Gamecocks are looking at a receiver, will be there on June 24th, which is one of those big weekends. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, I was just going to admit my own stupidity and aloofness. I've been working at Rivals since the first week of March, and I found out like 2 days ago that there was that feature of the drop-down list of the visit dates. I must have just missed that, like my first week here, and then I just never saw it again. But it's an awesome tool. Wish I would have been not dumb for that amount of time to see those, even though I knew what visits were coming and stuff. But it is a nice snapshot of everybody.
Yeah, it's not very well advertised. We were kind of keeping our own doc going, which we don't really need to do anymore. And I've been reading rival sites for over a decade and have never noticed it either. So yeah, it's not very well advertised. Click recruiting and click the visits, and there's an offers tab. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Look at us, guys who just have no clue what they're doing.
Yeah, just we're learning. We're learning. Also, before we move on from Trovon Ball, he actually just announced today that he got an Under Armour All-American game invite as well, which is pretty huge. And yeah, he's only rated a 3-star, but I think that would be a huge get in this class. And then I also think South Carolina has a really good shot with the 2 O linemen out of Dorman. They just offered DJ Geth, and of course they've been on Willie Anderson for a while, and I think they have a good shot at landing both of those guys. So that's a solid 3 if they can get all 3 of those guys in the boat.
Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, just sort of off the cuff here, I'm gonna hopefully have some time to look at like past South Carolina offensive line classes, because it looks like, let's see, the guys that, including Trovon Bow and Tosin Babalade, and I'm not pronouncing his last name right, but I forget how it was told to me how to pronounce it. So I was calling by his nickname Tree. That seems safe. So Tree, DJ Geth, and Trovon Bow are all 3 stars. Willie Anderson's a 4-star. So I'm interested to see if that mainly lines up with classes of the past like 5 to 7 years or so of South Carolina recruiting. And
I would say off the top of my head, it's pretty close.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, and you don't really get too many highly rated offensive linemen in the recruiting rankings anyway. You know, maybe a couple 4-stars here and there, but it's usually 3-star guys.
Yeah, it's just such a developmental position. It's the hardest position to evaluate at the high school level because of different physical growths and pathways and stuff. And then high school offenses aren't always conducive to a lineman skill set. And on top of all, like, I mean, as far as like maybe his strength is pass blocking, but it's a run dominant offense that he's in, or vice versa. But also, I was talking to Willie Anderson. He's a former Cincinnati Bengals. He's a Hall of Famer up for the Pro Football Hall of Fame and all that. And he was giving me some really good background on offensive line development and recruiting and all that. And he said one of the issues is that offensive linemen, their film is rarely from the proper angles to get a true evaluation. It's always from the side and far away, and then you can't see as well the footwork and whether a guy missed an assignment or if he was hitting all his assignments and things of that nature. So that also plays a part into the evaluations.
I also imagine at the high school level, they're very rarely having to use a whole lot of technique. If they are truly, D1 size, they're usually probably a lot bigger and a little quicker than the guy lining up in front of them. So, yeah, it's hard to really know until they are going up against elite talent, which maybe they'll see a couple times a year on film, but mostly going to see it these camps and stuff.
Yeah, that's, I think, a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit today with Tree. He's 3-star. He's going to, my opinion, I don't handle the rankings. That's the Rivals national staff and regional analysts, but I do get the feeling that he's a borderline 4-star. He'll probably, after his performance in the Philadelphia Rivals camp, picking up an Ohio State offer, Clemson showing some pretty strong interest, he's probably going to work his way into that 4-star status. And some of that is the what we were just talking about, and coaches getting to evaluate him now in the spring to get to talk to him in person, evaluate in person. I think those things also go into those things also factor in. So
definitely. So, I mean, that seems like a nice transition. So you've been on a little bit of a road trip last week, a big bit of a road trip last week. And going into that road trip, whenever you got to meet with Tosin Big Tree, it seemed like things were trending really well for South Carolina. But then, as you said, kind of coming out of that weekend, he got that Ohio State offer, and like you said, might be getting a Clemson offer soon, according to some people around him. Uh, where do you think the Gamecocks stand? Do they still have a shot there, or is this going to be one of those situations where they got in early on a guy, but then the bigger, more established schools come in and swoop them?
Yeah, it's something I wrote about today or yesterday on the site. Just because Ohio State came calling with an offer, like it's not like the boogeyman. It's not like it automatically means it's going to Ohio State. It's absolutely a consideration now. I think they're working on getting them up there for a visit in June for an official visit. Not set up yet, but I made a future cast prediction for him to South Carolina, and in hindsight, I wish I would have held off on that just because I was there. I was at DeMatha Catholic when Ohio State's offensive line coach Justin Fry and their defensive line coach Larry Johnson uh, walked into the building for a weight room workout, and then they got to see Tree for an individual workout, and they're filming him and evaluating him. And from all the information I gathered, like just everything combined with that situation, that experience, and talking with people, it was lining up. I was very, very confident that Ohio State was going to offer him. I wish I would have worded it a little more confidently in the story when I said that Ohio State's keeping tabs on him and all that, but like I kept it a little more vague in case it didn't happen, but it did. And in hindsight, I wish I would have held out on the future cast prediction. But I do still think South Carolina's is in a really good spot with him. That was one of the first two official visits he set. He set North Carolina for the first weekend in June, and then South Carolina. Did I say North Carolina first weekend in June? South Carolina June 10th and 12th. When I was talking to him at the the Philadelphia Rivals camp, and then he said Rutgers and Maryland after that, and then a few days ago he told me June 20th and 22nd for Rutgers. Maryland, he's not sure if that visit will happen or when it will happen. That is, and so the fact that they've been in on him and had a good relationship with him for so long, and his visit down there for the spring game is the first time he ever went to South Carolina. It's the first time he ever went to an SEC school. So he went in. He told me like sky high expectations because he's like, if it's an SEC program, like that's the best conference in America, like that's the best football. So I'm going to have really high expectations going in, and it was an eye-opening visit for him. I would pretty much say like the atmosphere blew him away. I know it was like 20,000 and some change. That was the official attendance for that spring game that we keep bringing up. That Shane Beamer after in that post-game press conference was joking like, no, it was way more than that. And
Which I think it was. That was kind of a shame that I don't know how they counted that, but I think that they were wrong. And I don't know why you release a number that's underselling you. No one's going to check you on a spring game. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So there was 80,000 people there, right?
Yeah, right.
That's what it felt like. Let's just go with that. That was what it felt like. No, but Tree agreed that like, yeah, it felt like a lot more than 20,000. I mean, it was the biggest ticket in town that night. Really, the whole weekend was like a weekend party to celebrate South Carolina sports. It was a big Gamecock weekend, and just not just the atmosphere, but getting to sit in on meetings and keep building that relationship with Greg Adkins, and sort of like see his coaching style up close, all that, and then also on top of that, like he told me, he was like, I'm already like just as big or bigger than like all the offensive linemen in their current room. He's 6'5", 310 pounds, heading into his senior year. Probably going to lose about 10 pounds or 15 pounds like before he starts the senior season. But it was all positive vibes and all like signs pointing toward, okay, South Carolina's going to be in that upper echelon. And I can fully confidently say it's top 3, if not top 2. And I still think they're in a good spot. But we are going to have to wait to see if he gets on campus to Ohio State for an official visit. If he doesn't, then South Carolina's in an even better position for him. So Ohio State's looking for their biggest need by far is offensive tackle in that class. They don't have a pure offensive tackle, and the depth chart's really thin there. But they've got a couple other guys in the Northeast and Massachusetts and Connecticut who they've had longer relationships with and are higher on the board for those reasons, and kind of waiting on decisions from them. But they also absolutely need one pure offensive tackle, but I've heard that they could they might be shooting to land two. So kind of depends on what Tree's going to see there and what he thinks of that situation. But Ohio State has officially entered the race, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on what I wrote about Tree and Desmond Umeozulu, who is going to take an official visit to Ohio State and South Carolina, along with a couple other schools. And what did you think of, for those who missed it? I wrote that the fact that South Carolina is going up more in the 2023 class, I wouldn't say head to head, but going up against Ohio State more for these like blue chip, high four star guys. Like, it's a good sign, right? Like, it's a good sign that you're in battles with the perennial blue blood for some of the nation's best talent.
Yeah, so this is something that we talked a little bit about a few weeks back, but the fact that they're really trying to expand their recruiting footprint into that DMV, and when I say DMV, I mean DC, Maryland, Virginia area, where the Beamer name obviously means something, but also the area recruiter there, which is Torian Gray. His name tends to carry a good bit of weight right there too. So I think the fact that they are trying to break into that footprint, and of course the first recruit from this class is from that area, the first commitment from this class is from that area. I think that's putting them, up against some unfamiliar foes whenever it comes to these recruits, and they're also expanding out into Texas, which is putting them into some unfamiliar recruiting battles there too, because for the most part, from what I can remember the last few years, their main competition has been, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, North Carolina, Clemson, people in their neighborhood. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good thing that they feel, well, not just feel, but that they are landing some guys from this area, and then, like you said, are in the top group for several other guys in that area. It'll not make it sting any less if they finish second to Ohio State with all of those sorts of guys, but I definitely think it's a good sign.
Yeah, that's one of the things I find the most fascinating. I mean, yeah, I have the recruiting background, so whenever a new coaching staff comes in, it's all right. What if any is going to be the new recruiting strategy as far as the footprint they want to start establishing, and like what areas of the country they're from, where their roots. And there's Pete Lembo, the new special teams coordinator, associate head coach. He has strong roots over, or not new, second year, but he has strong roots over in that area, Maryland area. He was assistant coach for Maryland for 2 years. Elon University, Lehigh University in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. And so he has some strong roots. Torian Gray, his reputation carries a lot of weight. I mean, the more and more I've talked to defensive back targets in that South Carolina is going after, and some other people like coaches and stuff like that. Like, the more I hear on and off record, like, Torian Gray has the attention of these guys, and he has that reputation obviously at Virginia Tech of what he's done with guys like the Fullers, and with their NFL development and the expansion of that recruiting footprint. Yeah, it's going to lead to battling like different schools. I find that fascinating.
It's really essential too, because if we think back to South Carolina's biggest like periods of success in football, a lot of that came from in-state talent, and unfortunately lately there hasn't been as many highly rated South Carolina recruits. So if they're going to compete in the toughest conference in the country, they're going to have to find. They're going to have to start turning over stones and find some guys outside of their um, immediate geographic area. I think they have a lot to. Sorry, motorcycle just went by. I think they have a lot to sell some of these kids that haven't really ever been to an SEC program, like you said, and they're getting in early on them, and that's all they can really do at this point.
Yeah, it's funny that we've talked about that before, like getting in on the players early, and um, sometimes you're there with an offer, evaluation, and offer like summer going into sophomore year. If you're some of these programs where that's crucial to get in that early, and then you see a program like an Ohio State or Alabama, or like I keep saying, Clemson. I know they're showing major interest in a guy like Tree, but no offer yet. But they come in so late to the process, and um, I was talking with one of the DMV coaches, and we were kind of in agreement. Like the player needs to decide like what's best for him. I mean, like just because a coaching staff came in like in the 11th hour with an offer like summer going into your senior year or fall of senior year, like if that situation's better for you, man, like take it. I mean, you always have to look out for your star player. You have to look out for you. Um, so even if it's been a years long relationship with some coaches in a program, like just it may not matter in the end. I mean, just based on individual situations.
Yeah, and another thing that we keep bringing up is how the transfer portal and NIL, which we've talked a little bit less about, work into all this too. But finishing second for some of these guys isn't really the end of the line anymore, as we've seen with the way that the transfer portal works. I mean, the fact that Shane Beamer had a prior relationship with a guy like Spencer Rattler and a guy like Austin Stogner made a big difference whenever they started looking around. So if you can finish second with some of these guys, and then maybe it doesn't work out at the bigger school, but there's still someone that can help your program, they might be there a year or two from now. So
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the message board guy or fan um, reader, uh, Joel FT 2001, who made that point in our forum um, that maybe we miss on a couple, but the relationships in the building will help us down the line with transfers. And yeah, I mean that's absolutely right. Like we just talked about. I mean, um, it incentivizes, I think, coaches even more to continue establishing that even if he has a pretty good inkling that it's not gonna pan out in his high school recruitment. I mean, again, I know people are probably sick of me bringing up Ohio State into this, but that's where I have the most background in this, doing that 2.5 years. And when I think of a situation like that, like we're talking about, I think of Tony Alford, the Ohio State running backs coach, with Trey Sermon. He recruited him out of high school, and he wound up picking Oklahoma. But Tony Alford does he's I mean, for my money, inarguably one of the best recruiters in the country, and um, maintain that relationship throughout the even after he picked Oklahoma, and kept tabs on him, like stay connected with him, and then and not even in a he wasn't doing it in a like, well, I hope I'm going to get this guy down the road if he decides to transfer. That's not like the long game that he was playing. He was just keeping a relationship um, with a high school player, and lo and behold, like down the line, that wound up paying off and getting a running back who really fueled their college football playoff run in 2020. So yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna see that just happen more and more and more over the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
well, and I think the South Carolina staff is equipped for that maybe better than most. One thing that we've heard from pretty much every recruit that we've talked to and every transfer, Corey Rucker, whoever, um, is the genuineness of South Carolina staff. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of these guys that choose other spots, the staff keeps tabs on them. Also says that same thing of do what's best for you right now, and I think that resonates with people for sure,
Yep.
especially in this world that's often not so genuine. All right, we are rambling because that's what we do sometimes. I do want to get back to your trip though. Who else did you see on your road trip? Where all did you go? I don't even know. Yeah, you bounced around a good bit through the DMV area in Connecticut and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I keep mentioning it in writing that I went to the East Coast. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I drove over to Philadelphia and stayed there for a week as the home base. I went to high schools in Philly, northern New Jersey, Maryland, DC, and Connecticut, and then drove back to Columbus. And it's 2,000. I count the mile meter on my car, 2,129 miles, and I keep across 4 states, and I guess 5 states if you count West Virginia and Delaware. I stopped in Delaware finally. I got an hour there to cross that off my state's visit map. But anyway, it was a long trip, and I keep saying it, but I'm like, I don't know why I don't feel sorry for me or anything, man, because I put it on myself to do it. It was a haul though. I was exhausted afterward, but it was definitely worth it. Got a lot of insight, got a lot of good content, quotes and stuff like that. But way more important than that is building the relationships with players that I write about, and like showing my face around to them, because it's like, I think if at all possible, you owe them that, to not just be an empty byline. But I went and saw Ernest Willer over at St. Paul's in Maryland, Braden Lee, and Blake Woodby down in Maryland, Dylan Stewart, DeAndre Cook, Jordan Seaton, Dante Reno up in Connecticut. And if these names mean nothing to you, that's fine. But these are all players that South Carolina has either offered or showing interest in the case of a guy like DeAndre Cook. But the main targets I wanted to see, the 2 main guys, were Zabari Sandy, who obviously already committed, and Dante Reno. And got a couple long form feature stories coming out on those 2 over the next week, just more so about not their recruitment as much as just sort of their background, and just, like I said, building relationships with players is more important. Also getting a feel for how they are, like getting to know them, kind of reading them. And I mean, a guy like Zabari, I don't think it's hard to like say, oh, like you just had, like, a player, a person after just spending like 1 hour with them, but you still get a good sense. And I don't think there's too many people that South Carolina could have had better in the class as the first commitment and the first face of the class. I mean, usually the quarterback or the star player closest, like locally, like closest to that school, is usually the face of the class. But over in DC, he is that so far. He's been peer recruiting. He had mentioned to me guys that he's going after. I'm like, all right, go on record with the guys that you need. And like you said, they're targeting the DMV area really strongly. He's mentioned Desmond Umeozulu, Neo Avery, Tosin, Big Tree, Nicholas Harbor over in DC. So there's a lot.
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys that are really
retweeting
going
people. Sorry, I've seen him retweeting people like every day. Every day I get on Twitter and he's, retweeting people from all over the country and definitely in that area. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to.
Well, and then that's obviously the public that he's doing, and just I think a lot of times that stuff's more for fans to see, like, hey, I'm putting in work. But I mean, obviously, the real work goes on behind the scenes. But and then Jordan Seaton, his teammate in the 2024 class above him, who's the number 1 offensive guard in the 2024 class. He's South Carolina's a little inside edge for him. Still so early in his process that wouldn't say there's any like school staying above the others. But Zabari, I mean, a good kid, good head on his shoulders, type A personality type, who comes off as a strong leader. And I have to give a shout out to him because 2 things. Number one, I got caught in DC traffic, which was pretty much hell. And he stayed for we were scheduled to meet up at 7 o'clock, and I didn't get there till 7:45 because of the traffic and visiting other schools. And he stayed the whole time, like to be able to talk with me. So that was nice. I really, really appreciated him doing that. And he was the more professional of us too in that situation. And then he told me the second thing was I was in the DC area for the first time ever. He's like, man, you gotta go over and see the Washington Monument. Go check all that out. And then I went over and did that and let him know that I did. So that was a good rec from Zabari. And as far as the non-recruiting stuff with him, one key piece of information is that Torian Gray actually visited him earlier that day. That was last Tuesday, the 17th, my dad's birthday, May 17th. And Torian Gray like visited him, and like they got to talking more, like, and it's become clear like they're going to start him out as an outside cornerback when he gets there his freshman year. Believe he's going to be an early enrollee, I believe. That's the plan right now. He was telling me, yeah, the reason he committed to South Carolina was because they love his versatility to be able to play all three defensive back spots: outside corner, nickel corner, safety, and he has experience at all three. And he could wind up projecting or transitioning to a different spot in that defense, but outside corner is the plan as of now.
Which makes sense because they just brought in a very safety-heavy class. So, I mean, they need to fill out that spot. But yeah, I think it's cool that you went in and got a little bit of an inside look on both Sandy and Reno, because I think that's something that South Carolina fans should be very interested in, because I think those are two names that they're very likely to hear for a good while for the next few years. And then, yeah, any insight on what's going on with Dante Reno? So that's the top quarterback target for the Gamecocks for class of 2024. If anyone doesn't know that, and he's in Loomis, Connecticut, right?
Yeah, Loomis. I forgot to ask them how to pronounce the name, but it's Loomis Shafi, I think.
Yeah,
is how you pronounce it. It's prep school up in Windsor, Connecticut. Back in my old neck of the woods, I lived in Hartford, Connecticut for about 7 months in 2019. So that was a little blast from the past. Did not miss the East Coast congestion traffic.
Connecticut's the worst.
It's so congested because it's the midway point between New York City and Boston, and so many people who live in Connecticut are commuters who commute to either city every day for work, because it's so much cheaper to live in Connecticut and just make the 2-hour drive to that city. So then everyone gets back in that rush hour, and it's just your standstill traffic for what seems like forever.
Yeah.
And then there's also like a point in Connecticut, like on the highway, that was like a block away from the area I lived, where on the interstate, where I could see the exit, I could see the lane to get in to take the exit, and I would be stuck there for like 45 minutes just sitting there because of traffic. And a lot of times, like the way the sun comes up when it sets, like it blinds you. It's like blinding pretty much, where you have to go like 2 miles an hour. But yeah, so anyway, it was fun getting up there. It was awesome to meet him in person, a few other guys that are Ohio State and South Carolina targets that I've written about or will be writing about on the site. With Dante, the situation hasn't changed. I mean, ever since March, I've felt like South Carolina was the favorite to land him, and that he's their top quarterback target in the class. I mean, Jaden Bradford's also a name to keep in mind, but he's a South Carolina native, and he's down at IMG now. I see Reno as being the guy in South Carolina's class, and I've known since he took 2 visits in March to South Carolina, and 2 visits in a 3-week span, and that sort of kind of catches the eye of like, all right, well, that's pretty serious when they're unofficial visits where you're paying out of your own pocket. And I've known since late March, early May, that his plan was to get back down there for a 3-day stay in June, but was kind of keeping that close to the vest until he made it, until he officially like locked that in. So he's going to be going down there June 8th through 10th for a 3-day visit. And the plan is the plan as it was back a month or two ago. He's going to stay with one night with Spencer Rattler, one night with Luke Doty, get a better feel for everything about what life would be like as a South Carolina quarterback and everything, build up comfort relationships with them, and see if this is the place. I mean, see if that's where he ultimately wants to go. I know he took a visit, either took a visit or is taking a visit soon to Virginia, but I put a future cast prediction in for him to South Carolina. I'm feeling more confident about that now. I think the plan is to potentially get back down to South Carolina again later this summer, but that's still to be determined. But it's continuing to trend upward, and I'm sticking with that prediction.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that article whenever you get it out in the next week or two or whatever.
Let's put pressure. It's going to be the best thing I've ever written. It's probably going to want to pull it, but like, no big deal if you don't read it. You're just going to be missing out.
No big deal.
Yeah.
So if you do want to read that article and the Zabari Sandy article, definitely go check out GamecockScoop.com. Those will both be paid articles, so you will have to pay your $10 a month, but that's nothing, right? You pay more than that for Netflix, and there's nothing good on there anymore. So
what is Netflix now a month? I still have that's like the only streaming service I don't pay for myself, and that's on my parents' bill. What are we talking here per month?
Yeah, I pay for the full biggest Netflix package because I let other people take my passwords and stuff. Don't tell them, but I mean,
you're a point guy. It's generous.
No, I think I pay like 18 something now. It's getting up there, but I also saw a lot of people are canceling. I'm thinking about it too. I don't know, but
I spend more time, like, I'm the classic guy, like stereotypical, who spends more time looking for something to watch on Netflix than I do actually watching whatever it is I pick. Like, there was one night, me and a couple of my buddies spent 3 hours. Well, it probably wasn't 3 hours, but it was like, I mean, it was a long time, like probably at least 2 hours, like sifting through trying to find something to watch. And we landed on Sharknado 3.
Well, there you go. Classic film.
I mean, should have won Best Picture. We watched it for like 10 minutes, and it was like, this is just beyond terrible. And then we turned it off, and it's like, all right, well, night's over. So that happens to me a lot. They
definitely took the quantity over quality approach there. Anything else you want to share from your trip, or you ready to move on, or anybody stand out from the Rivals camp that we haven't already talked about, or you haven't already written about?
No, I mean, I've written about everybody from the Rivals camp. Actually, no, I didn't. There are two cornerbacks that Ohio State's or South Carolina's offered, in one in the 24 class, one in the 25 class. Braden Lee from Maryland, and Blake Woodby from St. Francis in Maryland. Braden's over in Charles Herbert Flowers. Those are two of the guys I didn't write about, because I'm going to write about them more extensively a little later this week. Braden was one of the first guys I talked to when I got this job, one of the first recruits, and he's the one who said that he was like one of the first people of guys I talked to who was like really impressed with the way the program's trending. He said South Carolina's the fastest rising program in the country, and he has some big time offers, like in Ohio State, and I could sift through his offer sheet, but he's a big time prospect. And I asked him point blank, like, is South Carolina, like, tell me honestly, like, is South Carolina a real consideration for you? And like, he didn't hesitate, like saying absolutely. And the interesting part about him was the story he told me that I wanted to share here that I haven't yet on the site. Him and Zabari actually told me similar stories. Braden, one of the reasons South Carolina is a genuine top school for him at this point, they're highly prioritizing him and his teammate Desmond Umeozulu, and they sent the entire South Carolina staff. They sent the entire South Carolina staff to his school during the most recent live period. And I'm like, all right, the entire staff, how many did they actually send? Like just 2? It's like, no, they sent 5 staff members. Like it was Shane Beamer, Torian Gray, I think Atkins, and 2 others I can't remember off the top of my head. But like Braden said he was walking to school and his head coach called him. He's like, dude, you got to get here soon. Like there's people waiting on you. He gets there and it's just 5 South Carolina coaches in the coach's office. He's like, oh, all right. Hey, how's it going? Like, so that was that.
Hey, that's how you make someone feel like they're wanted, huh?
Yeah. And that's the same way as Zavari said the same thing. Like 5 or 6 coaches showed up to his high school. So the effort's there. And I mean, so much recruiting is effort. Like, that's why I can't understand why a program like with the resources and like a South Carolina does, why they hadn't been able to break through in recruiting. And this staff is showing that energy and effort that they're serious about it. So and I'm not saying these things that I've written in the past couple of days, or saying this now, like just trying to give like an optimistic view. Like I'm not a South Carolina fan. Like it's just an objective view of how they're doing things and how they're operating. And it's just a 180 difference from what's been with past staffs, from everything I've gathered. And it's trending upward, and recruits are noticing that. I mean, the caliber of guys are getting on campus, the caliber of guys are going to see, not just going to see and get, but they're actually making headway with them. So that was just the latest example of that. And Braden, long cornerback, probably be an outside guy, could play safety a bit. Remains to be seen. He has 2 years left at high school, so it's always fun to watch how cornerbacks develop. And then Blake would be the 2025 guy. He's a nickel corner right now, but just another name to track early in his recruitment.
Do you have time to do a fun thing real quick, or you got to run?
You're damn right I have time to do a fun thing real quick.
All right, great.
Well, I'm always having fun.
All right, so definitely if you want to hear more about Zack's trip and all of the different people that he's talked to, he's already posted a few articles on GamecockScoop.com if you just look over the past week or so, and then we got some more coming out in the next week or two. But I posted a fun article yesterday because we're in peak off season right now. Obviously some recruiting stuff is happening, and I don't know, I don't have stuff every day. So in peak off season, things get a little weird. And I got this idea to try to pick out the twins of South Carolina and all the other Power 5 conferences. So the schools that, I don't know, just have a South Carolina vibe. They seem the most like the Gamecocks in other Power 5 conferences. And I was wondering if you, because I don't think you haven't read my article yet, right?
No, in full disclosure, Caleb, first off, awesome article idea. And I think I told you, I was like, I wish I would have come up with that myself, so I could brag to people that was my idea. And you wrote it, and you told me in show prep, like, don't read it. I want you to think about your own. I'm like, all right. So I respected that. Not only did I not read the articles, so I wouldn't be inspired by it to name the same things. I haven't done any prep for it, for what the South Carolina brethren, the twins, are in other conferences. So we're flying by the seat of our pants here and ad-libbing. But I mean, you know how like Step Brothers was like 70-80% ad-libbing? That's kind of what we're doing here.
I think it's going to go great. So how about I give you a conference and you tell me the school that you think, not necessarily that I picked, but the school that you think is the most like South Carolina in that conference. Does that sound good?
Yeah. And there might be some dead air here as I'm thinking and wrapping.
That's fine. Yeah. You pull up your conference list whenever I say it, if you need to. All right. First conference. This one should be the easiest one for you because you have experience in this conference. All right. So Big Ten, who's your South Carolina equivalent in the Big Ten?
When I thought about it like right before we hopped on, and this was actually ironically the hardest conference for me to think about because I think I'm overthinking it. I was thinking about it in recruiting terms. I think you you went with a different route, I believe, like just as far as like all encompassing program. I think of it in terms of like recruiting ground. I mean, South Carolina has a solid recruiting ground and foundation. Like they're in the South, and weather's nice, beautiful city, uh, great facilities, all that. Um, but they still have to venture out, like we keep saying, in different parts of the country. And um, so if I'm looking at that, in South Carolina, it feels like a sleeping giant a little bit. Um, as far as like a program that could just see a boon. I mean, like I said, fastest rising program on the rise. It keeps getting recruits into town. So when I'm thinking of a Big Ten team that sort of has that feel, it's Maryland, because
Okay.
Maryland, it has been the school that I think we like. It seems like every year there's some story or multiple stories over the past few that Maryland's about to hit it big. Like they have the Under Armour scenario where that should in theory pull recruits in, um,
Right.
and they're always
They're the Oregon of the East Coast or whatever.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and just haven't been able to get over the hump. I mean, what I'm looking at the record 7-6 last year, just like South Carolina. Um, I'd be interested to look at the recruiting rankings, but
Yeah, South Carolina is also an Under Armour school, so there's another similarity there.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
and like we said, they've gone toe to toe with a a few recruits. South Carolina fans in particular are kind of mad at Maryland right now. I think though,
oh, they'll love
because
that then. They'll love that comparison.
who was it that flipped to Maryland at the last second last
Oh,
year?
I was just thinking of him the other day. Is it the 2022 cycle?
Jason,
Oh yeah, Barham from
Jashawn Barham, yeah.
Gamecock.
So, and then there was like some beef kind of between the staffs after that, and I think Beamer was pretty. He came out pretty pissed about the way that it all went down too, because it seemed like basically Maryland set him up to commit and then decommit. I don't know. There was some weird stuff that went on with it. So anyway, that there's
That's
some pissed off Gamecock fans at Maryland right now, but I do kind of see the comparison that you're making there.
the off record stuff that you hear on the recruiting trail and covering it that you can't report. That's the more fun stuff, right?
Yeah. All right. So there's our Big Ten. So my Big Ten team was Michigan State. And then someone on the forum actually said Purdue, which I thought Purdue actually might be even better than Michigan State. But my
Purdue was my first thought too when I was thinking through it. So glad.
Yeah, the way I said it on the forum was that I think Michigan State's like the ideal version of what South Carolina could be, where they're not necessarily the um, biggest program within their own state, and they have a lot of people surrounding them that they're competing against, but they could be this consistent, 8-9 win team that can jump up and compete for conference championships every now and then, and that's what I think ideally the situation could be. But yeah, I think that they were more like Michigan State maybe when Spurrier was here. They were on a similar trajectory, and then things kind of went down from there. While Michigan State bounced back pretty good lately, so I don't know. Maybe not ideal. I did like the Purdue one. I like the Maryland one too. All right, let's move on to the ACC. What ACC school do you think is most like South Carolina?
Before I get into it, do you think NC State or North Carolina is like the bigger honcho program in that state?
For football?
Yeah,
I still think it's North Carolina, even though they're more of a basketball school. You could argue. I still think that they're probably the premier football program in that state too.
that's what I think too, and that's why ACC was the first conference that I thought, or I was kind of going alphabetical with the Power Fives, and so that was the first one before I started thinking about the other conferences. And NC State was the one that stood out to me, just again recruiting type of scenario, and like you just mentioned about Michigan State, like they're not the premier program in the state, just or at least not like the biggest brand or most successful recently. Although Michigan State's had a pretty good run under Mel Tucker so far. But anyway, it's kind of similar where South Carolina is up against Clemson in their own state. Clemson's obviously their successes, it speaks for itself over the past few years. Even though Clemson's recruiting strategy is something that I don't know if we have to get into, but with opinions on how they sort of operate in 2022. But I see NC State as the similar program, just another like sort of middle of the pack ACC team. Like South Carolina's a middle of the pack SEC team, but one that just again feels like on the verge of a breakthrough. I mean, NC State was a 9-3 team last year, and I think they have pretty high expectations this year, if I'm not mistaken. And they're going up. They have to fight the North Carolina brand as their top team in the state and in the recruiting.
All right, we hit on the same one there. I had said NC State as well.
Hey,
the two, yeah, the two schools historically have pretty much the same record, and they both started the same year, 1892, and they're both right around 500, a little over 500. They also share a common coach. Lou Holtz coached there from 1972 to 75, and then obviously coached at South Carolina. And actually, Lou Holtz's first game at South Carolina was against NC State, which NC State won because South Carolina did not win a game that year. So that was my pick too, for a lot of the same reasons that you said. They are battling a bigger brand within their own state, and have kind of, they've never won a national championship. They haven't won the ACC since 1979. South Carolina's last conference championship was the ACC in 1969. They have a little bit of a rivalry, interconference rivalry with Clemson, although they've had a little bit more success lately. Maybe South Carolina can get on their level because they did just beat Clemson last year. But all right, we got two more. Pac-12. This was probably the toughest one for me.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought was UCLA, just because, like I said, or like I keep harping on, the in-state program, really crosstown rival for them. Where that's the bigger brand and a little more successful in football historically, a lot more successful historically in football, especially the past 2 decades. That's my initial thought. But the recruiting base in at UCLA is a lot stronger than what South Carolina has. From that perspective, I can't say Washington State, I don't think, because the state of Washington's not really deep in the talent pool, or Oregon State. I don't know. I'll just stick with UCLA, my original pick. I'm pretty confident that's not going to be yours, but you know what? We're not trying to match up here. Just because we have great chemistry, but come on.
That is not mine, but I don't think that's a terrible one. I'm looking at their wiki right now. They've only won one national championship, and that was in 1954. So it's been a long time. They did have a string of some conference championships in the 80s and 90s, which is something that South Carolina never has really had. But yeah, I could see it. I do think that I agree that they're definitely better than Washington State as far as the interstate. Like if we're keeping the same theme of smaller program within a bigger state and all that. I actually went with Colorado. They also have a national championship, though, in 1990. But for the most part, other than that 3-year run from 89 to 91, they haven't had like a ton of breakout seasons, even though they've been fairly consistent. They're actually like 27th all time in wins, which I found a little surprising. But the comparison I made was their struggle in joining a new conference, which South Carolina, when they first joined the SEC, definitely really struggled, but then it seems like they've finally gotten their feet under them and are starting to reap some of the benefits of being in the stronger conference. And Colorado, when they first joined the Pac-12, didn't have a winning record for the first 6 years. But then they did have a little breakout season there, and they seem like they're kind of getting their feet under them. And also the comparison I made was that they have like the city going for them, like as something different to offer than some of the other uh, people that they're recruiting in their immediate geographic vicinity. But yeah, that was a little bit of a stretch. It was tough for me to pick a Pac-12 one. I like the UCLA one.
Yeah, I'm gonna pretend that I really like it too now that you say it. So give me a little more confidence to really hammer that one home. Is the last one we have left the Big 12?
Last one's the Big 12. So who do you got in the Big 12?
Um, just I think I would say Iowa State again for a lot of the same reasons. I mean, they're going up against Iowa. And like you kind of said, South Carolina football and South Carolina athletics is the biggest ticket in town. No NFL team or NBA team or anything like that right around the corner. And Iowa is the whole state is Iowa football mainly, but it's your Iowa or Iowa State football and basketball. And
That's an interesting one. And also you have the two rivals being in different conferences, which you got South Carolina and Clemson in different conferences. So
yeah,
that's a cool one. I'm trying to look. All right, Iowa State's got a little bit of a worse all-time record than South Carolina. They're down at 456, so a little under 500.
I'm looking now. I had your article pulled up, and each time we went through a conference, I scrolled to see after I talked to see which one you had, and Oklahoma State is yours, and that's the other one I was thinking when I was looking through the list.
Yeah, and that one's tough too because I would say probably the ideal candidate is somewhere between Iowa State and Oklahoma State because Oklahoma State's been a little more successful than South Carolina, and Iowa State's been a little less successful than South Carolina. But yeah, the reason I picked Oklahoma State is a lot of the same reasons you picked Iowa State. And I sort of viewed Oklahoma State the same way I viewed Michigan State, where it's like kind of the ideal of what South Carolina could be, where they're competing in the same state as a more established national brand. Oklahoma State's been kind of 500 for most of their time. They each have a Heisman winner, both of them a running back in the 80s, although Barry Sanders, probably a little better than George Rogers, but Barry Sanders is better than every running back in history. So,
Yes, come on, baby. He's
uh,
he's my favorite running back of all time. I think he's the best running back of all time. I did a book report my sophomore year of high school on him, and I just like I was in love. I had a Barry Sanders jersey, and I'm terrible at art. I made this just god awful clay model of Barry Sanders when I was in 8th grade. So there we go. Come on, tell me.
Yeah, I mean, George Rogers, amazing, one of the best college running backs of all time. But it's really hard to beat Barry Sanders. But yeah, basically what I said about Oklahoma State is they would have been on basically identical trajectories since 2005. But Ohio State had a younger coach in Gundy that's still there and still keeping things rolling. And then, Spurrier kind of bowed out of the race in 2015. And we know how that's gone since then. But they were on very similar trajectories up to that point. Oklahoma State has never won a national championship. They've only won one conference championship back in 2011, which is around the time that South Carolina was peaking as well. So yeah, I historically that one made a lot of sense to me, but like we said, they're in a little better position over the last decade at least than South Carolina's been.
And so let me hit you with a curveball on the spot here.
All right.
Who's the SEC team that's South Carolina's twin?
That is tough. Although my immediate and like easy answer would be Arkansas, probably because they came into the league together. They've had some similar trajectory, but I think Arkansas has got a richer history from before joining the SEC.
Am I just taking the cop out answer of just taking whichever is the number 2 brand and college brand in the state?
So who do you got? Auburn?
That's what I kept saying. No, either Auburn or Mississippi State.
Yeah,
Mississippi State answer, but
Mississippi State makes sense. Although they had some years with Bear Bryant, right? So I assume they have some national championships from way back then. But that's an obvious one. I like Mississippi State.
You said that so nicely to me that your answer was cheap. That's an obvious one. It's a good pick. Like, all
Oh
right.
no,
Yeah, you
um,
shot the news subtly to me.
maybe they haven't won a national championship. Actually, if I'm looking right now, they have won a conference championship in 1941 and a division championship in 1998. So that's another one that probably has had a worse history overall. Yeah, their all-time records 493. So a little bit worse history overall than South Carolina, but I can still see the comparison. I mean, of course, if we're using Auburn, Auburn's had a better history. So maybe again somewhere in between those two. But yeah, I like all those, and it was a fun little thought experiment, and I think we got a good mix of like what their ideal scenario could be. Like you said several times, they're kind of a sleeping giant, but also a realistic look at, they're a slightly over 500 team historically. So it is going to take someone to finally break through that glass ceiling to make it happen.
Well, I'm glad that I think we gave a little fire and ice to that segment where I'm going off the cuff without putting much thought into it at all, like, and then just seeing like where, like a Michael Scott sentence, like just start it and see where it goes, and then you come in with the actual analysis and like the historical context of everything. So that was a good tag team effort.
No, yeah, I liked it, and that's what I was hoping for, is get a little outside perspective since you didn't grow up South Carolina, like surrounded by South Carolina and all that. All right, I actually think we're gonna have to start to wrap up. I have a call with someone that just got a South Carolina offer, Dadrin Zipperer. I'm not sure if I said that right, but we'll find out after I talk to him. And yeah, if you want to check out that article later, GamecockScoop.com. I'll probably have some quotes from him posted tomorrow. Anything else you got before we go, Zach?
I think I talked enough for a lifetime today. I'm sure the rambling is going to be really popular on the YouTube comments, but you know what? I got a lot of stuff to say, like I said last time.
Hey, I thought it went really well. All right, so since I did not get to the baseball stuff, how about I give you guys a solo episode on the baseball stuff tomorrow or Friday, and we can talk about how things have gone and what's going to happen with Kingston and all that fun stuff then. And by fun stuff, I mean not fun at all. In the meantime, go check us out on GamecockScoop.com. Make sure you subscribe. If you want to listen to the audio version, it is on Spotify, Google, Apple, all the podcasts, everything. And subscribe so everything comes in as soon as it's posted. Until next time, this has been Caleb and Zach with GamecockScoop.com and the Gamecock Scoop podcast. See ya.